Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us here on Wella Canada West. My name is Nichelle Desertel, and I am a field education trainer with the Wella Company based out of Vancouver, BC. Today, I'm going to be going live with the Wella Studio TO, and my coworker Zach is going to be joining us, and he's going to be showing us some fringe benefits. So he's going to be doing a little bit of cutting, and we are also going to be talking about a new product from Sebastian No.Breaker. So I'm going to bring him in.
Ooh, hey, Nichelle.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I always forget that we're half screen. I gotta bend down here. Uh-oh. Give me a
Yeah, I always
second.
have to adjust my camera and my light whenever we go.
There we go. There we go. How you doing?
Good.
Cool.
I'm gonna adjust mine here too. There we go. Perfect.
Awesome.
That's better.
So yeah, welcome everybody. Like Nichelle said at the top, my name is Zach Ferguson. I am a field signature artist out of the Toronto. So we're doing a little coast to coast collaboration here, which is really exciting. The power of the internet, the power of social media. And like Nichelle said, we're going to walk you through a little bit of some fringe or some bang cutting techniques. I have a couple of just the pre-dones here that I'll just quickly show you what we're going to talk about today. And really because we're going to be, the foundation of this is we're going to be talking about Sebastian No.Breaker. So anytime we're talking about Sebastian, I'm going to implement some Sebastian cutting techniques, which is slightly different than what I typically do. So I'll be showing you some razor techniques, but again, showing you some commercial looks as well as a little bit more of a stronger, bolder fringe. And we'll do that relatively quickly, but throughout, we'll talk about the benefits of No.Breaker, and then Nichelle is going to be talking about a little bit of some color services that we can add on, in the salon environment to help boost your retail sales and to increase your ticket sales in a really great glossing technique. Again, that is supported by Sebastian No.Breaker.
Yeah.
Sounds
Amazing.
good?
Awesome. Yeah, I love the look of your mannequins already. I can't wait to see what you're about to do.
Yeah, me too. So really quickly, I'm going to start off with, I'm going to move this one out of the way first. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a stronger fringe, a little bit of a bolder fringe. Something that typically looks like it's done with scissors. The difference between when to use a shear, when to use a scissor, really depends on the look you're trying to achieve, the hair texture that you're working with. But in this case, I want to have a bold fringe line, but add a little bit more texture to it. You can't really pick it up in the light too well, but you can see some pieciness that you can definitely work and change and manipulate a little bit more when using a blade. So I'm going to swap her out. So this is the before or the after. I'm going to get to the before now. And so I think fringes, and Nichelle, maybe you can talk a little bit about this as well. But fringes are a huge part of the salon industry, and I think that now more than ever, we're getting into the habit of really doing a lot of long hair. So the question is, how can we change that? How can we give the client something a little bit different? And a lot of times it comes with the fringe area. So how can we manipulate that, give them slightly of a different look while it's still maintaining a lot of times longer hair? Do you see that in the West? I mean, compared to East, sometimes things are different.
Definitely, we see a lot of it out here, especially in Vancouver. We get a lot of extensions, a lot of long blonde hair. I feel like that's pretty universal for anywhere on the coast. And yeah, often the question is, well, I want to keep my long blonde hair, but I want something different. So how can we
Yes,
change that? Exactly what Zach said is by using a fringe, or what's really popular right now is a curtain fringe. I feel like we see it everywhere right now.
everywhere. It is
But
everywhere.
yeah, it's a really great way to change someone's look without having to sacrifice length or doing anything drastic with the color. So,
Exactly. So, sorry, Nichelle, just quickly, am I a little too close? Is this better if I back it up a touch?
no, that looks great.
Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to start with that little bit more of a stronger fringe line. And when we're talking about fringes, a lot of times we really got to understand where we are on the shape of the head and where we're starting, where we can, change depending on face shape or head shape. I mean, typically what we're looking at is the fringes can go as high back as the apex of the head. So as far back as the apex. Anything past that, you run the risk of having pieces fall to the side and they don't really want to cascade forward. So the apex of the head is one of the main points that we're looking at. Secondary to that would be the width. So how wide do we want to make the fringe? And a lot of times that depends on A, the client's face shape, or B, the aesthetic that we're trying to achieve. So two slightly different approaches that I'm going to show you again. But in this case, I'm going to go a little bit wider. So I've taken just past the eyebrow, and the eyebrow is a good benchmark on clients' faces. So the eyebrow is typically the brow line would line up with the widest part of the forehead, usually. Sometimes there's some variations in that. But what I'm going to do here is, because I want to create a very strong fringe line, so a square shape, I'm going to be taking a square or a horizontal line straight across my subsection. And when we are talking about fringes, a lot of times, fringes are the areas that clients tend to blow dry the most or use the most heat tools, because this is the front of our face. So a lot of times there's damage associated with that. And one of the great products that we just recently launched is Sebastian No.Breaker. So again, we're going to support everything that we do today with Sebastian No.Breaker. And what this is, it's fundamentally a leave-in treatment that's going to help to restore the broken bonds during chemical process or heat processing. And in this case, I'm going to be using it as a sort of cutting tool, not designed to be used as a cutting tool, but really designed to really focus on the damaged hair. Like I just mentioned, fringes tend to be where we're doing a lot of color work, where we're doing a lot of blow drying, heat styling. So there is going to be some damage, most likely associated with that front. So I'm going to prep the hair. I already have prepped it with No.Breaker, but I'm going to spray a little bit more.
So Nick says hello, and he also says you are a legend.
Oh, hi, Nick. Miss you, buddy. The legend himself.
Yeah, the legend himself. Nick is also a legend. Also, when we talk about fringes, and I think like I definitely have this kind of breakage on my hair, the hair around our face tends to be a lot finer and a lot more fragile. So it just like it's more prone to breakage. And I definitely get that on my hair, where I play with the front of my hair most. I style it the most, like Zach said. And that tends to be where the most of my damage is, like right on that fringe area.
Right in the fringe, exactly. So I'm just going to get into it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a little bit of an undercut. So there's going to be a little bit of a shorter fringe that's going to be hidden. A lot of it that has to do with the amount of hair, but sometimes if you want to give something a little bit more creative or a little bit more PC, we can disconnect the fringe. So it's going to be a slight undercut. And I would typically be standing right in front, but I don't want to give you my back. So I'm going to be starting kind of on the side. And really with the blade, again, the cool thing is that it can give you both texture and like a line. So cutting a line, but texture all in one shot. So you can see right away, I've already produced a little bit of a shorter micro fringe right here, but there is texture to it. I'm going to come across, do the exact same thing. And it's a skimming technique. And I'm not so worried about it being extremely perfect. If I wanted that, I would be using my shear for starters to give a real defined line. But in this case, I don't want to, or I'm not so specific on the sharpness of the line.
So with this, obviously we're doing Sebastian, so we're talking about razor techniques, but in a case in a salon, where would you choose to use a razor over scissors?
Great question. So where would I use scissors, or where would I use a razor over scissors? To be honest, I'd say 70% of the time I'm using shears. That's just the way I like to work. I find it's a little bit structurally, I like to have a little bit more of a foundation. But when I have clients that want a little bit more creativity, or a little bit more of a piecey look, a little bit more of textured look, I definitely use the foundational tools, so understanding head shape, face shape, hair texture, and so on. But I'm just manipulating the finish with a different tool. So it really depends on what the aesthetic that the client and myself are really trying to achieve.
Awesome. That's a great answer.
So I've gone and just established a very loose kind of undercut, if you will. I'm going to do 2 sections like that. And again, a lot of times an undercut's great if a client has extremely thick hair. And I know sometimes we run into that. Where I wouldn't do this application or this technique was on somebody who has finer texture or finer hair in the fringe.
And how wide are your subsections that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so each subsection, how wide is each one going back? Again, that's going to vary depending on the client's hair texture and density. But I would say this is about 1/4 of an inch.
Nice small sections.
Small sections, thin to win, thin to win. Like anything, even when we're talking color, you know, we always preach thin to win sections. So same with hair cutting. It's not a race. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to get there as fast as I can. So again, a very, very cool micro fringe, and I could totally leave that if I chose to, and continue working up and giving a very small kind of micro fringe. And some clients like that, that's really kind of in now, especially when we're getting into the mullets and all that kind of cool textured haircuts that we see. But in this case, we want to leave it a little bit more commercial. So I'm taking a 3rd subsection. And this is where I'm going to start to go. I'm going to disconnect and take it a little bit, slightly longer than my previous 2 sections.
So, and Nick mentioned this kind of in the comments, are you almost doing a reverse graduation?
I guess technically you could kind of say that, yeah, because it is going from shorter to longer. So technically, yeah, it is a reverse graduation of sorts. And so I'm starting a new guideline. And again, there's no specific in terms of where, you know, how high or how low I am on the head. That all depends on what you and your client are kind of talking about, right? In terms of where you want to see the finished result. In this case, it's probably disconnected about an inch.
Okay. And what kind of benefits do you get from having that undercut underneath the longer fringe?
Yeah, so it just makes it a little bit more piecey when you dry it, and you can add, you know, when you're adding your product, and you can kind of open it up a little bit and get a little bit more movement, even in a shorter fringe. If something was all the same length, it would be quite heavy. Sometimes it just lays there a little bit too full of a fringe. And sometimes that's not always the aesthetic or the look that we're trying to achieve. Again, this is just something a little bit different than what we're typically doing. So I'm taking a 3rd now subsection here. And I'll match it to my longer guide. And with the, you know, while we're using No.Breaker, it is adding a little bit more of a, because you never really want to cut when the hair is in between wet or dry. With the razor blade, sometimes it can pull or tear. So this is adding a little bit of moisture to the hair as well, allowing for that blade to really kind of, you know, cut through that hair seamlessly. I'm not tugging. I'm not really pulling at the hair. So that's definitely an advantage of using any kind of cutting lotion, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. Now, like Zach said, No.Breaker isn't traditionally used as a cutting lotion, but I do find even on my hair, it does give it a little bit of slip, so I can get my brush through it a lot easier. So it can
Exactly.
definitely be used as a cutting lotion. is there anything else in the line that you like to use as a cutting lotion, or have you been sticking to No
Um,
Breaker?
I mean, recently I've been sticking to No Breaker, but I would say if I'm, switching gears, if I was in the Wella world, usually what I suggest is adding a little bit of Perfect Me to the water, and we can just kind of into the water bottle and spray that way. You don't want anything too heavy, and you don't want anything that's going to kind of weigh the hair down post cutting it and getting into the blow dry.
Yeah, definitely. Products that you can kind of layer on top of that aren't
Layering,
gonna,
yeah.
yeah. So Nick has a question here in the chat. He says, does No Breaker contain malic acid? And
Ooh,
that is a wonderful question. So when we talk about No Breaker is a bonding styling spray. So it helps repair the bonds in the hair that can happen to mechanical damage, like heat damage, or chemical damage, like color damage. And it's actually helping repair those bonds through the styling process. But unlike Wellaplex, we do not have malic acid in No Breaker. It is apple acid. So it has a wonderful kind of that apple kind of scent to it. And it does have, I do find it has a little bit of hold to it as far as in the, like holding my style in my hair. Do you find
yeah.
the same?
A little bit, yeah, because it is like you mentioned, it's it helps to repair, but it's also a little bit of a styler as well, right? So it does have a little bit of hold to it, but just ever so slightly. It's not anything that you can feel in the hair after the fact or anything too, because you can layer it, right? So it is something that's going to be very easy to use, and it's not going to be too heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. So Nick says he has not tried it yet. Nick, you are missing out.
Nick, where have you been?
Where have you been?
So, quickly here, again, I was standing to the side a little bit. Typically, I would be standing right in front of my model and looking at it. And so now I'm using a small screen to kind of look at, but you want to look at the pieciness that you can get from it. Again, this is wet. So when it dries, it's going to expand a little bit. I'm going to get a little bit more fullness out of the hair. But that undercut is really going to allow you to get really kind of soft pieciness to the hair and to the fringe. And again, just giving your client a very different feel. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this length. It can be longer. It can be shorter, however you choose to finish it. But it is a really cool kind of technique, very easy, very quick. And again, just giving you something different than what you normally would kind of give to our clients.
I think the nice thing about doing this kind of technique with a razor is if someone is looking for like a PC bang, and I'm like you, I'm default to my scissors, but then you spend, after drying, you spend all that time texturizing and point cutting
Texturizing.
to get it that PC look, whereas this kind of kills
Yeah,
two birds with one stone.
exactly. And with scissors, anytime you go in and put a straight line, it is very difficult to take that line out, right? So again, it's like you mentioned, Michelle, giving our clients, and sometimes they'll show us a picture. And how do we do that? How do we achieve this? What tool do I use? Well, we know that we don't have to necessarily be afraid of using the razor. It is a friend of ours. It's just if we use it properly, right? So I think, again, a really cool little technique that I give you. You can see it now as I move it a little closer, but a little bit of pieciness. Now, if I was to leave this hair curly, it would look great on curly texture, and you get a kind of micro fringe in there, curly texture and so on. Doesn't necessarily just have to be on straight hair.
Yeah,
Right?
it's beautiful.
Cool. Any other questions there about this before I switch gears? I know time is of the essence.
We don't have any questions, but we have very nice or very Blade Runner from Nick, and Aaron Whitney says, love it.
Cool. All right. I'm going to switch gears now and go to a little bit more of, like you mentioned earlier, Michelle, the curtain fringe, the bane of my existence. I say that because everybody's asking for it, and there's a million ways to do it. There literally are a million ways to do it. I know that I posted a couple videos on how, but I wanted to show you kind of similar to what I've just done is just implementing a little bit of a shorter or a disconnected piece that kind of gives you a little bit of a pieciness right in the middle of the fringe, and then having a little bit more of a softer towards the outside. Great for any kind of length. Obviously, you see here on a shorter length, but long hair, curly hair, anything that has a little bit of movement, texture in it is going to really be something that you can use in the salon.
Yeah, I love how you say there's 10 different ways to get there. It's something I always say, not just in terms of cutting, but in color. You know, it's always interesting to see how people get there because there is tons of different ways to get to a certain end result and have it look the same.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the best part about what we do. We're all artists. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. This is a way. There's 10 other ways. So it's just hair. It's really just a fabric. Right?
Yeah.
We just
So
have to have fun.
So Nick says, love it. And Savannah says, obsessed with that fringe. Well, stay tuned and see how he does it.
Okay, here we go. So I'm going to do. I've done the same thing. I've used Sebastian No.Breaker just before the client was, or before the model was, or during prep. So I prepped with No.Breaker. But I'm going to do the same. So obviously, if this were an actual client and we took her blonde, there would be potentially some damage or some dryness or some broken bonds. And again, this product, Sebastian No.Breaker, is going to help to, establish those bonds and really make a stronger finish to the hair. A little bit more of a, what would you say, the breakage, is it up to 97% breakage?
Yeah, up to 97% less breakage. So.
I said, yeah, I didn't put the word less.
It really is amazing. I know when I got my sample of it, I mean, I always come in very skeptical when it comes to products, even though Wella, Sebastian, all those brands always blow me away with how their products work. But I definitely, because right out of quarantine, I went blonde, very, very blonde. I don't know if you guys remember that. And then I've kind of started growing my hair out and gone darker and changed my color multiple times. So I had quite a bit of breakage in my hair.
Mm-hmm.
And No.Breaker has been a staple for styling my hair because it's that instant gratification product. You feel it immediately after using it, how much better your hair feels. And even using it on clients in the salon, the first question they ask is, what did you just use in my hair? Because they can immediately feel how much better their hair feels afterwards.
And this is a product that obviously clients can take home. This is not just a salon product. And how often would you suggest that clients are using it, Michelle?
Awesome, thanks. And Nick actually just asked that question too. So,
oh, Nick, hey. Great minds think alike.
So, yeah. So it is recommended to use No.Breaker once a week. So it's not something you would use, say, after every shampoo. It would be something that you would use. And we say once a week. I usually like to talk in terms of how many shampoos. So I would say in between 3 to 5 shampoos, depending on how much damage you have going on your hair.
Okay. So I'm going to start here. So I've done the same kind of concept. I've gone from the apex of the head, so the highest point of the head. The only difference is I've gone a little bit wider. So I've taken it past where the eyebrow wants to sit, and it's just, or where the eyebrow wants to finish, and it's just past that eyebrow. So it's almost like the cheekbone, which is another point of reference that we can use. So it's slightly wider than the eyebrow. Reason being is that I want that softness of the fringe to carry on into the side, so to travel into the side. So again, what we're looking at is something that's going to be going from shorter in the middle to a longer exterior. So it's actually a rounded shape, what we call rounded shape. So in a couple of videos I've posted before, I've done it with scissors. So I'm going to show you a way that we can do it with the blade. First thing I want to do is I'm going to create a subsection, a triangle in the middle. So I'm taking a center part, and I'm going to, sorry, it's hard to get a center part when I'm not in the middle.
The joys of being on live.
The joys of live. So I'm going to take a sub-triangle, okay? So it's like a mini fringe. And there's one thing I didn't talk about earlier, but sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, When I'm doing a haircut, I like to do the fringe first. So a lot of time, stylists tend to do the fringe last. It's almost like an added or a hurry up service because we spent so much time in the back of the hair. You know, we wash the client. We're like, oh my God, I hope this color looks good. I hope this looks good. And you don't want to look in the mirror and really face that client. But the fringe is the first thing that the client sees. So if we start there and give them something that they're looking at and they're like, I love this fringe. Oh, I'm so into this fringe. I don't even care what the rest of the hair looks like. It's kind of cool. They sit there and sometimes I'll even finish it. I'll blow dry that. So they sit there and they really feel good about the process rather than leaving everything to the last minute. Not to mention that sometimes, you know, your next client is here and you have to hurry up. The last thing you want to do is hurry up on something that's so important as being right in the front of the client's face.
Yeah, that's a really great call out. I never thought of it that way.
Take a look. Most stylists start in the back, right?
I would say I'm definitely guilty of that too. But even thinking about it, if you are doing something like a curtain fringe or something like that, you probably build like it makes more sense to build the rest of the haircut around that fringe versus
Absolutely.
leaving it to the last minute. So
Great point. So I'm going to start. I'm taking another subsection. So I'm taking it right in the middle here. Now, again, this is fairly wide, but I'm going to use the shear or the blade to take off a little bit more weight during the process. So I'm going to start a little bit higher. Again, I want this to be relatively short in and around the eyebrow because this is going to be the small little disconnected piece. So I'm okay if it's pretty short. And again, I'm going to come in a little bit higher. So I have a little bit longer of a stroke here. I'm adding a lot of texture, removing weight, keeping softness. So there we go. So there's my guide for the following two sides here, okay? So I have a little bit of a undercut here. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take each side. This is where it gets a little bit more tricky when I'm on the camera. Tell me if you can't see. But now I've split this in two. I've split my first section in two. So I have a sub guide right here. Maybe you can see that.
mm-hmm.
Okay. So now I'm going to cut this on an angle, going shorter to longer. So I'm going to change my finger here. I'm just sliding the shear down. So it's getting ever so slightly longer. I'm going to do the same thing on the next subsection here. And I'm using a little bit of over direction, so I'm directing everything kind of to the middle. That way it's going to save length as I get toward the outside. I see my guide again here, and I'm going to continue. There we go. So now I have like a micro curtain fringe, if you will. I'm going to do the same thing on the second side here. So I'm, again, taking a smaller subsection. I have my guide. I find my guide here. And then the next one. Same concept. Okay. And sorry if my back is to you. I just want to check for balance. So what I'll be checking is here, the longest points, and they're relatively close. Does that make sense? Any questions?
No questions,
No
but
questions.
it's looking beautiful.
Okay. So this again is a smaller, just picture it like a fringe on a fringe, right? So I've had a sub, so you see the sub kind of triangle underneath. So now I have another triangle that's on top. Now, if you think about it, this is going to be the hair that wants to, you know, and especially because styling is so important and we're heavy on styling. So we want to make sure that this hair is long enough that I can get that bend, but it's going to come across into the side. So there's going to be a disconnection point between the two. But I'm going to be doing almost the same idea as I've just done. So I'll start on this side. So you can see here, if I pull this down, you can see the second triangle, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, this is going to be disconnected. I'm going to take a subsection here, comb it over my first section, and I'm going to create a new guide. Okay, so you can see here I'm pulling it straight down, but I'm going to create a disconnected guide. And this is going to be a little bit of like feeling out. Some clients might want it a little bit longer, but I'm typically aiming to start around the bridge of the nose. So the first section was around the eyebrow. Second one's going to be the bridge of the nose, getting gradually longer. Again, come in with my blade. And there we go. Next one. Same concept. Over direct to the middle. I can see my guide underneath. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, depending on how much hair the client has, you may sweep and take a little bit more weight out. If you stay relatively, shallow with your blade, you're not going to be removing that much weight, and you're just going to be cutting almost a line with it. Okay. Two more. We okay for time, Michelle?
Yeah, we're doing good for time.
Okay.
I love this because it really shows by having kind of that mini fringe underneath. It really shows how you can kind of build those layers and texture on top of it to kind of get that pieceiness.
Absolutely. And you can see, so a lot of people or a lot of clients, I shouldn't say people, a lot of clients will tend to be weary about a razor haircut. And I'd have to say that a lot of times it comes with user error. So people not using it properly. And I think that if you, like I mentioned at the top, if you understand the fundamentals of hair, head shape, face shape, over direction, and understanding where you're trying to go with it, the razor shouldn't be something that clients or yourself are too afraid of using.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Now, would you use a razor even on curly textured hair? Or?
So great question. I wouldn't normally. If I was doing a very micro fringe, I could think about using it. But if I'm getting into anything that's a little bit longer, I most likely wouldn't. What happens with curly hair tends to be a little bit more dehydrated. The cuticle isn't laying flat all the time. And to get the blade in there and really work with the cuticle, sometimes you're fighting it and you're creating more dryness and you're not really helping the situation, if you will.
Yeah, you almost are causing kind of fuzziness
Yeah,
and frizziness.
exactly. And so a lot of times, that the question is, oh, you need to have a product to fix that, or you need to, use this to help with that. But it could simply be something as using the tool at the wrong application. So last section here, again, I'm using over direction. So I've directed everything not past the middle, but to the middle. And you'll see gradually that each section that you take, you'll have less and less hair coming off, because this hair is actually traveling a lot further than when we started. Okay. So you can see, even when it's wet, you get a great kind of shape going on. And as soon as we start to blow dry that and manipulate the shape of the hair, you really will start to see the curtain fringe come to life. I'll quickly do the second side. And if there's any questions, Michelle, please fire them away.
Yeah, definitely. We don't have any in the chat right now, but we do have some hearts and great tips. So if you guys have any questions for Zach, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will read them out for him.
Cool. And again, yeah, using No.Breaker, it does really help, because a lot of times too, I don't know, Michelle, how often you said you don't use the razor that often, you said?
I don't use it that often. It's I would say something I would maybe bring out for a very select few clients. It's definitely not something I use that often.
Yeah. I think though, there's a couple things when talking about razors and blades. One of the most important ones is that yes, we have a cutting tool or an agent to help with the moisture level, but number two would be making sure that we have a fresh blade, a sharp blade. Anybody tried cutting a tomato with a dull knife?
Yeah, no, you
Not very
definitely
successful.
can. Yeah,
So I
always
mean,
having a fresh blade is key.
yes, it is always helpful. And I'll just do the last section here. But the cool thing with using a tool that you may be not familiar with is that sometimes we get bored doing the same thing over and over again. Why not change it, right? Why
Yeah.
not try something new? Sometimes we don't learn unless we step out of our comfort zone and try using a new tool or a new technique.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love seeing the shape that you're getting in there. You can really see how you built it on your final result.
Yeah, cool. And like I said too, it's not something that's only on long hair. It's not something that's, specific to short hair like I showed in the mannequin. This is very versatile and it can be used on many different applications in many different lengths. So yeah, you can really see it even as it's kind of setting, this cool kind of very shaggy um, fringe that's happening there, right?
Yeah,
And the
it's
undercut
beautiful.
really helps to, the other benefit of the undercut is it helps to push the hair above it into the shape, right? So a little bit of it's helping to manipulate that shape.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
see,
gorgeous.
if I was to do this on my client now, I blow dry this and let that sit and kind of, then I can go back and say, okay, maybe I'll take a little bit more or I'll take out a little bit more weight. And I'm not so much worried about what's going on in the back of the hair, right, to the rest of the haircut. So they can sit there and they feel comfortable with what we've done in the fringe. So I'll just quickly show you again the after so we get an idea of what we just created. Pew. Yeah, and again, so shorter look, shorter hair, same idea, really kind of piecey in the fringe here, but disconnected.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. Now I want to go try it.
Yeah, test it out.
Yeah. The next mannequin you guys see, I'm gonna have that fringe on it.
There we go. See? But
Amazing.
yeah, so that was a fun, fun little thing about fringes, and anchored by, again, of course, the No.Breaker, which is going to help just the process and the drying and the feeling of the hair after fact. Um, so I think, Nichelle, you have a couple really cool and unique coloring services that are
Yes, and
anchored.
you can find all these in the apps. I just printed it off just for like kind of a quick visual. So one thing that I like about Sebastian is whenever we release stuff with Sebastian, they always come out with service guides or kind of cocktailing services that you can do kind of with the new products that get released. So it's really nice because they're great add-on services for services in the salon. They're usually quick. And in this case, we are going to be using cellophanes with our No.Breaker. So it's a glossing service that we can use with our Sebastian cellophanes. So for those of you guys that don't know cellophanes, they are a semi-permanent kind of gloss that we can put on the hair. So it adds a lot of shine onto the hair. It also kind of helps repair the hair as well. And they come in a variety of different colors as well as clear. So because there's true semi-permanent, they're not going to shift or anything like that on natural hair. So for somebody looking for a gloss or just some kind of shine or maybe a hint of another tint, cellophanes are a great option. And so we've released a service called a glossing service with cellophanes and No.Breaker. So you're repairing the hair with No.Breaker and getting the shine and kind of color from the cellophanes. So it is a quick service. You would shampoo the hair, apply, it would be 60 grams of your cellophanes to 20 pumps of your Sebastian No.Breaker. So that was 60 grams of the cellophanes and 20 pumps of your No.Breaker. You'd apply it to the hair for 15 to 20 minutes with heat, or 45 minutes without heat. And then you would rinse and kind of finish your service. So I have a mannequin that I did multiple demos on. So anytime you guys see us do demos on lives, I like to reuse my mannequins. So she was quite damaged. She had like 3 or 4 lightning services on her. So I'll move her up. So this is kind of the side where I did nothing on. You can see she's got quite a bit of damage in there. Her ends are quite frazzled and frizzy. And then on this side, and this was no flat ironing, nothing like that. I just used a flat brush on the hair. And this is the side where I did the cellophanes and No.Breaker service. So you can see there, you know, a ton of shine in there.
Shine. Yeah.
It's smoothed the hair out quite a bit. Like if you just look at her head on, you can see even with the flat brush, she's still quite fuzzy on this side, whereas I got a lot of smoothness and manageability on this side with not even having to use an iron. You can really see the difference here between the 2 services.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives, you know, cellophane sometimes is kind of one of those color services that gets a little bit like more of an afterthought. Sometimes you know, it's under a lot of salon sinks, and we don't use it that often. But pairing it with something like No.Breaker, again, like Nichelle is showing, you know, you're getting great benefits of both the No.Breaker as well as the benefits from a semi-permanent gloss. And so it would be a great quick service as well, especially, you know, talking about that glossing segment. So I think it's a great opportunity for salons and stylists for sure.
Yeah. So Laura had a question here. Did I use clear? And the answer is no. I used the Ice Blonde. So the Ice Blonde is kind of like a violet based cellophane. So you can actually kind of see it did tone her blonde a little bit compared to the other side where it's a little warmer. I don't know if that shows up as well on camera. But this is a great option too if you have blondes that, you know, maybe have been lightened one too many times and need a toner or something, but you don't think they can handle even color touch or any other kind of toner. You could use cellophanes to kind of gloss and correct that a little bit, as well as add shine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can find that service menu in the app. It is under our Sebastian app. Under Knowledge Library, there is a service guide for No.Breaker in there, and it will have all of these formulas on there as well as more. So I encourage you guys to go on there and check it out on the app.
Cool.
Perfect.
And this video is going to stay up indefinitely, forever.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
If anybody watches it and has any other further questions about any of the techniques, or about No.Breaker, or about the service that Nichelle showed, please reach out to either myself, Nichelle, anybody on the West, anybody on the East. All of Canada team will answer your questions as quickly as possible.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Zach, for coming on live with us at Wella Canada West. I love seeing you cut. It's always a pleasure. And I was happy we got to work together on this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nichelle. Look forward to the next one.
Yes, definitely. So we will see you guys same time, but on Wella Studio TO next week. And I hope you guys join us then. Thank you guys so much for joining, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.